All right, guys, we are live. This is the UFC 260 recap show on the Sherdog YouTube page. Also, on everywhere you get a podcast with the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network. I am your host. My name is Keith Shillan. Joining me, as always, is the senior editor of Sherdog.com. He is the great Ben Duffy. Ben, oh, what a night, man. How you doing?
Oh, what a night indeed. I mean, no shortage of things to talk about, is there?
No, I mean, we've seen one great champion fall. We saw our former champion fall. We had a breakout star, or at least one of the biggest, seems to be breakout stars, get back on the horse. A couple other things. We have so much to talk about. Let's get right to it. We have a brand new champion. There's a new baddest man on the planet, and his name is Francis Ngannou, as he knocked out Stipe Miocic in the second round of their second fight, in their rematch fight. I was in Boston the first time they fought. If you told me, what was that, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? I don't know how many years ago it was.
About 3.
3 years ago. If you told me 3 years ago that Francis Ngannou would be the champion, I'd believe that. Like, it wouldn't have been shocking. If you told me this is how we do it, sure. Like, I wasn't shocked by the performance tonight, but I'm still impressed. Like, I wasn't shocked that this is how it went down, but I'm so impressed by what we saw tonight. Francis Ngannou was absolutely perfect in my eyes tonight. What's your overall? We'll dig into it a little bit, but what's your overall just feeling of the fight?
Absolutely sensational performance by Francis Ngannou. Like you, if you had just told me the night of their first fight that, hey, 3 years from now, Francis Ngannou is going to be champ, he will go on a 4-fight win streak to get the rematch, and he will win by knockout early in the second round, none of that would shock me. What shocked me were the specific optics of this, and I'm sure this is probably what you're going to want to get into, but going into this, and you and I both picked Miocic to defend, to win the rematch, and I, in particular, went in saying, I haven't seen any evidence that Francis Ngannou is better prepared to deal with Miocic than he was.
Yeah.
He's looked great, but his wrestling hasn't been tested. He's been, in some cases, even more just kind of frantic and heedless, and not terribly defensively sound a striker, and all that just completely blown away tonight. He looked sensational.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unwrap. So let's get into this. So one thing, he fits the title. Like, you know that meme that goes around when Miocic and Cormier were fighting each other, and it was, Daniel kind of looking chubby, and Miocic, and he was wearing like a red, white, and blue like shorts, and people were saying, imagine if I told you these are the two baddest guys on the planet, you'd be like laughing at it. Oh, they don't fit the thing. That's not the case with Francis Ngannou. You show a picture of Francis Ngannou, you never watch fighting, and you go, hey, this is the baddest dude on the planet? Yeah. So not only is he the baddest dude on the planet, he's also the scariest. And that title doesn't always go hand in hand. I mean, you think about when Randy Couture was the heavyweight champion of the world. Like, no one looked at Randy Couture and goes, oh, he's the scariest guy alive. Or Rico Rodriguez, or Tim Sylvia, or, whoever.
Well, Fedor Emelianenko.
Perfect example. Yeah, perfect example. That's not the case with Francis Ngannou, and this is why it is perfect for the UFC. So I'm going to pause on the X's and O's, because we like to get in the X's and O's. We like to break down what we saw, and there's some amazing things what we saw. But this is what I'll say. This was perfect for the UFC, because combat sports had been looking for a guy, and you know me. Hold on. So I know we got a lot of people watching. We'd love for you guys to jump in the chat with us. We'll try to interact as much as we possibly can. I like to live in the moment. I do. I know it's a flaw I have. I like to exaggerate. But combat sports has been looking for a Francis Ngannou for probably 30 years now, 25 years. And this is where I'm going to jump with this. Francis Ngannou could be MMA's Mike Tyson. And what I mean by that is he looks the part. He obviously plays the part. If he touches you, you're going to go out. And it's been, before this, every one of his fights, 4 fights in a row was under a minute and 15 seconds or so?
Four fights in under 3 combined minutes of cage time leading into this. Yeah.
So you have that Mike Tyson feel, and now you have the greatest heavyweight champion in UFC history. Some people believe the greatest heavyweight of all time. I'm okay with if you want to say that. If you want to give it to Fedor, I'm okay. We'll get into that a little bit later. But to put him out with a little short left hook, this is a dream. Am I overreacting? And guys, if you're in the chat, do you see my comparison that this could be what the UFC's been waiting 30 years for, to have them on Mike Tyson? Am I overreacting, or do you agree with me, Ben? Am I overreacting, or is it there?
I'm not quite as far along the Mr. Recency as you are, but I'm pretty close. I am a longtime hardcore fan who, in the moment, feels like a casual fan, where I'm like, that's the toughest dude I've ever seen. I want to jump out and be like that. I'll say this: he's closer to it than just about anybody they've tried to roll out before. Like, I remember when Crow Cop came over to the UFC, and Rogan was like, this guy's like a heavyweight Chuck Liddell. He knocks people out with crazy, left head kicks. And I, who would watch him in pride, was like, I don't know how he's going to do in a cage. Famously, he wasn't even training in a cage before he came over. And when he fell flat, at least compared to expectations, I was like, that's not too surprising. I think at the very least, Ngannou could be what they wanted Brock Lesnar to be.
Sure. Okay.
Because if you line up and I don't care whether you put Stipe first, Fedor first, if you line up the 10 greatest heavyweights of all time, pretty much all of them are like between 235 and 245 pounds.
Yeah.
Like, if Ngannou can fight at this pace and actually have staying power to, he didn't have to really tonight. It was really one-sided. But if he can overcome adversity and not just be a serious gas tank liability, he could be this 265-pound guy who looks like a comic book hero and actually can hold on to this title for a while.
Yeah. I want to throw some shout-outs. First to Dizzy Day. He's in the chat. He mentioned he's talking about matchmaking with Francis. We'll definitely get into matchmaking in a second. He mentioned that he hopes I feel better. Guys, that was from last week. I was doing the show. I announced that I actually got tested positive for COVID. I actually feel great. I've had a week off from work. My whole family ended up getting COVID this week. This is not about me, but yeah, everyone actually in my family is doing really good. So thanks for asking, my man. And Alo Bobbins made a really good point. I'm assuming this is a male. If I apologize if it's a female. He says, or she says, the person says.
He says, she says.
Yeah. The person mentions that he has all the physical attributes of a Mike Tyson, but he says he doesn't have the scary personality. And I agree with that. He's got the look. Obviously, he's got the knockout. He's got an incredible backstory. So you get on Joe Rogan's podcast, he tells his unbelievable story. The amount of people who reached out to me who don't even listen to, doesn't follow MMA, but they follow Joe Rogan's, the Joe Rogan podcast, number one podcast in the world, all that. The amount of people that mention me and say, hey, dude, you got to check that story out. Oh, my God, tell me about this guy. Tell me, how good is this guy, Can he win the title, blah, blah, blah. The amount of people, of casual friends that reached out to me. So that, I didn't even think about that. You got that part to it. So he's got all that. But, yeah, he doesn't have that Mike Tyson coming out with the towel, the black shorts, the, head bobbing, mean, rough, New Yorker. I get that. But he's got Cameroon on his side. He's got the tough streets of Cameroon. He's got that tough, even worse growing up than Mike Tyson had. And Mike Tyson had a tough childhood, and I get all that. He didn't have... And there's two parts to Mike Tyson. Remember, the pre-prison Mike Tyson and the post-prison Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson got and as crazy as it sounds, after getting out of prison, he was crazier than what going in prison, not what he did, obviously. But I'm talking about his personality. He was kind of a quiet guy. He was scary or quiet. Then he got the face tattoo, and I'm going to eat your children, and the bite in the ear. And that's the whole second one. But this is not Mike Tyson. But this is where I'm going with this. Let's talk about the actual fight for a second. So we both picked Stipe Miocic. Now I did say that my gut was telling me Francis, but my brain was saying the same thing you said. I haven't seen anything to make me think it'll be different. Not that neither one of us said no, he didn't improve his cardio. Neither one of us said no, he didn't improve his takedown defense. We just said we don't know. When he just knocks everybody out in seconds, so how do you know? I knew the very first time Miocic got on the hips and his face was planted down like mat. Not only did he stop a takedown, but he actually got behind him and started landing punches.
Pancaked him, spun to the back, and started throwing. I thought it might be over right there. Like, credit to Miocic's still just unbelievable chin and recoverability that it wasn't over right there. But yeah, as soon as I saw him pancake the single leg and spin to the back, I was like, oh, I am very, very wrong about some things I assumed going into this fight.
Yeah. Arlo also mentioned about the longevity of Mike Tyson. I'm not a boxing guy. I was extremely young when Mike Tyson was in his run. I don't really know the longevity of Mike Tyson versus Francis. I don't know. I'm sure there's many people. Ben is much, much older than I am, so maybe he knows.
God damn. Whoa.
I think you're like 1 year older than me or something. I also, besides the takedown defense, I thought Francis was brilliant how he started. He didn't load up on things. He didn't throw the big looping shots that he did throw the first time, which allowed Miocic to time his takedowns, to get under his hips. He was throwing short. He was going to the legs, which is obviously going to affect the movement of Stipe, which we saw was so effective against Daniel Cormier in the third fight. But also it stopped the drivability through the hips of the takedowns. I thought that was brilliant. It just so, like short things, jabs, and he's got the power that he obviously can hurt you. He dropped Miocic with a jab. Like, to me, all those things were absolutely brilliant.
Completely. And I felt as though the UFC booth was trying to play up the idea that maybe Ngannou was getting tired, like saying, "Oh, his mouth is open."
Oh,
I
man,
didn't
I agree.
see that at all. Like, presumably he would have gotten tired if the fight had continued going, but he was fine in the second round. His hands were up. His hand, like, they seem to have fixed his problem with bringing his hands back, to his chin when he throws. But yeah, like throwing straight, compact punches, it underscores how fast his hands are.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, he was undermining his own hand speed for a long time, kind of coming up, because he would throw like wide looping haymakers, and some people that, maybe not as much pure hand speed as him, but know that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, were able to keep up with him.
Yeah,
like Miocic in their first fight.
Yeah, I also was impressed by his precision. We said that on the preview show, and guys, if you don't, if this is the first time you're ever watching this, we actually do a preview show. Both me and Ben, we kind of switch roles where Ben kind of plays the lead host on that one. One thing I always talk about is his precision. He doesn't get enough credit. Like, he can hit a grazing shot and knock you out, but the areas where he lands shots are so impressive. And I think that was the case again. Like, I'm so impressed. Even that knockout blow, he got caught with a nice punch and was able to throw this little shot and just catch the chin of Stipe coming in. I was so impressed with that. I just like how patient he was. He's really learned that he doesn't have to take you out with one punch, not that one big looping, the punch that he landed on Rosenstruck, the uppercut he landed over him, because he has the most unbelievable power that it doesn't have to be. Like, the punch he put Stipe out wasn't a huge shot. It was a short left hook, which to me makes it even scarier now that he doesn't have to load up and he can still put you out. And if he doesn't load up and he's throwing everything in tight, he's going to land more, and he's going to get more knockouts. Like,
he's going to land more. He's going to get more knockouts. He is not going to tire himself out as quickly. He is not going to be. He's going to be harder to take down. I mean, it all feeds into the same thing. This was a terrifying performance if you were a UFC heavyweight.
Yeah, no, I know. So let's pause on the matchmaking for a second, because I did. Well, obviously we're going to get into exciting stuff with the matchmaking. Let's talk about Stipe for a second. He landed that punch, and it was a good punch. That's a punch that put out Fabricio Verdum. That's a punch that put out many people. That's a punch, that hurt. That everyone remembers the body shots on Daniel Cormier in the second fight, but it also was a big shot that put him down. He hurt him to the body, then went over the top. I don't blame him for going in. You land a clean shot like that, you might think the guy's hurt. You're a heavyweight. There's your moment. Imagine if you land the right shot and you knock out Stipe. I mean, you knock out Francis. You're Stipe and you knock out Francis. Imagine that moment. We're not even. If he one punch knocks out Francis Ngannou, we're not even talking. The debate of greatest heavyweight is over. Now we're talking Stipe top 5 all time, regardless of weight class. You know what I mean? It would be a legendary moment. I don't blame him. Unfortunately, when he hit Stipe, when Stipe hit Francis and kind of forced him off his back foot, he had to drop down to the hips then. He had to. That was his chance. He got excited, and Francis didn't. Francis caught him coming in. Let's talk about a third fight. I know that's not going to be the net matchup next, but if you're cornering Stipe, what do you tell him? Like, what? I am less convinced that Stipe can make a change for a third fight than I was that Francis could make a change in the first fight.
I agree. I'm going to rewatch this fight. Probably rewatch it a couple of times in the next few days, just because so much happened so quickly. I know that for you actually had a little hang up on the broadcast.
I did.
So, and I'm sure plenty of other people did as well. I'm gonna rewatch it, but my thought is, going into this fight, I could tell you exactly what adjustments Francis Ngannou needed to make in order to be more competitive or to beat Stipe Miocic. I didn't necessarily believe that he'd made them, and it turns out that he had made all of them. Like, he did literally everything you could have told him after the first fight to fix. Through kicks, knew how to get his hips away from a takedown, threw shorter, straighter punches, didn't load up on everything. He checked every box. The problem going forward is that, as smart a fighter as Miocic is and as well prepared as he always has been, I don't even know what to put on the list.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to ask you, and this just came into my head while you were talking. I was watching The Embedded today. The Embedded. It's like my tradition. I don't watch The Embedded during the week. I always watch it the fight day. It gets me excited. I watch them all in a row. I just binge watch them. I was watching. There was DC was talking to Stipe, and he asked him, like, how much you going to weigh? Did you you came in very light against me. Are you going to bulk up because Miocic has you're a disadvantage to Ngannou. Ngannou's much bigger than you. Maybe that's it. Maybe you bulk up. Maybe you try to put 10 more pounds so when you get in your hips, maybe he can't flatten you out as much. I don't know. I'm throwing stuff against the wall, trying to figure out what sticks. I'm not saying I'm not a coach either. I'm just trying to think, if a third fight comes, what could you possibly tell him? Or do you do the opposite? Do you go even lighter and try to get even more speed and use even more movement? I don't know.
Just the only question then would be, are you going to be able to get him down at all? Just his obviously he tried one takedown, and takedowns, they get much, much easier when you're shooting them on a tired person.
That's right.
That's standing up straighter, that isn't getting out of the way as quickly. So, if he had gotten hurt badly in the first round, then knocked out in the second, if he's still trying takedowns in the third or fourth round, maybe they're coming easy. He is still one of the best wrestlers we've seen at heavyweight. I don't know. And this is just my personal bias coming out, but I've always been very skeptical of body transformation as a key for a heavyweight to shore up their game. It just comes from having been a Frank Mir fan for so long and see him come in like, super skinny against Lesnar for the second fight, and then enormously yoked against Carwin, and just trying to find like the what's the magic weight I need to be at to beat this guy, when it was really just don't let Carwin push you into the fence and uppercut you 15 times in the face. Like, and he even said it himself. He was like, I had this great plan. I just forgot about getting punched in the face.
Yeah.
Because of that, I am suspicious of that. I think most heavyweights just fight best at a weight where they're in shape, where they, feel strong and energetic. Like, you can look at Fabricio Verdum and tell how he's going to perform just by, does he have a gut and does he look like a mess, or does he have a six pack?
Yeah.
And I think that's the way it is for most heavyweights. Like, even Stipe, he's raised like 10 pounds over his entire career. Like, 238 is about as light as he's ever been, and about 248 is about as heavy.
Yeah. And our buddy Tiz, he mentioned, like, we're not, neither Ben or I am counting, Stipe out of a third fight, of a trilogy fight. It is Stipe Miocic. This is a guy that has been able to find so many ways to find victory. I was so impressed by his victories over Daniel Cormier, the way he adjusted in those fights. Obviously, his knockout of Fabricio Verdum was one of the most impressive, different things like that. So the other thing I was thinking of is, what if he looked for takedowns but tried it a complete different way? What if he tried getting through the storm real quick and upper body locked him? Now you can get in a clinch position, you push him against the cage, you slow him down in that grueling pummeling. You're taking a huge gamble because you're coming into the shots. You're getting in the dirty boxing. You gotta have to lock up both arms. Like, you have to get those things. But that's a position where, one, guys don't really drill takedown defense from inside there. There's a little more into windows, and there's a little more little intricacies to Greco style takedowns, judo style. Maybe that's what you do. You can tire him out. I'm just, like, again, I do the same thing I did last time. I'm just throwing stuff against the wall and see what sticks.
And to bring back two people that we've already mentioned in the show, it makes me think of Couture versus Lesnar, where in the first round, Couture actually had a good bit of success clinching with Lesnar and pushing him into the cage, because if you are chest to chest, it matters less that your arms are twice as strong as the other guys. Like, if you are Randy Couture and you're just a master of head position, I mean, Lesnar didn't know what to do. And Lesnar's 30 pounds bigger, actually a more credentialed amateur wrestler.
Yeah.
I mean, now...
He was NCAA champion.
He was NCAA champion, whereas
D1.
Couture was, a runner-up.
Yeah.
To
Mark Kerr, by the way.
Yeah, to Mark Kerr. At 197. So, yeah, but... I mean, it only took in the second round one, canned ham fist of Lesnar to make the whole thing for naught, but...
Yeah, which is the same thing.
But it did draw a possibility, a way that a smaller fighter, who's savvy enough, can neutralize a bigger person, if they can't get them down with a conventional takedown. Because, Randy Couture at 43 or whatever he was not going to get a snatch single on Brock Lesnar. But
that could be because if you're shooting on his hips, you're carrying his weight. There's a lot to that. So, like, again, I don't have an answer. I'm just throwing up ideas. And if anybody in the chat has ideas, people are talking. The chat's going pretty well. Let's talk about Miocic. Let's just talk about his legacy. If he never gets a UFC title again, I think he's the greatest UFC champion of all time. Heavyweight champion, obviously, I'm talking about. What does this do for his legacy? It's obviously you're gonna have trolls out there that'll say, Fedor or this guy, that guy, he was never that good. There's always those idiots. But I mean, for the vast majority of fans, does this do anything for him? Because it does nothing for me. Like, I don't lower him down at all. He got caught by the hardest hitter of all time.
Yeah, I'm among those who think that Stipe Miocic is the greatest heavyweight in MMA history right now. He certainly could have advanced that by winning tonight. He could have put a little more space between himself and the pack, but this didn't knock him out of first place for me. He lost to a younger, bigger fighter, a fighter who was favored to win. if he were to retire tonight, he'd be my greatest of all time as of March 28th, 2021.
Yeah, to me, the UFC debate is over. Is it between him and Fedor? Yeah, I kind of lean towards him too because to me, wins matter a lot. Who you beat matters a lot. And overall, I thought he got better wins. And I also think one guy said, but his career just ended. You got a punch by Francis Ngannou like that. That very well might be the end of your career. Not saying he won't fight again. I mean, that does a lot of damage, and he's up there in age. And but I also look at this loss like if he goes on a losing streak and he's done. I look at this similar to what I looked at Fedor at the end of his career. Like it's kind of the same thing. Like everyone's gonna have that moment. John Jones is gonna have that moment eventually. Eventually, that's
John
gonna
Jones
happen.
might have that moment in the next 6 months. I mean,
we're
going to talk about matchmaking eventually, right?
So all right, let's get to the matchmaking. So to me, there's obviously three options. The first option is the third trilogy fight. I think we kind of already talked about that. The second option, Joe Rogan said, that's Derek Lewis. I understand the marketability of that because, two massive giants. You want to talk about, I don't know, I don't follow, I should know when the Godzilla King Kong movie's coming out, considering it's been played every single commercial break for like a month. I still didn't pay attention to know when it's coming out. But you could literally promote those two guys as actually no, you don't do King Kong but you get what I'm saying. Two guys who could come in a town and wreck the whole city, kind of, But to me, there's no way if John Jones is serious, and that might have changed after tonight. If John Jones is serious about fighting at heavyweight, and you can make the biggest puncher in UFC history versus, in my opinion, the greatest fighter, or at least in the conversation, pretty much everyone's conversation, who's really never lost, you can't put something in between that. You have to make that fight right now.
Yeah. All right. For the record, Godzilla vs. Kong debuted on Thursday.
Oh, okay.
The 25th. So it is out. I can't believe I haven't seen it. I can believe I haven't seen it yet.
I don't even know how to see it, and it's been played in commercials like 40 times. Okay.
Jay, you're a friend of mine. Sherdog associate editor Jay Petrie. His prediction for the next fight is Ngannou versus Lewis 2. He thinks the UFC is going to bungle the Jones negotiations and is not going to offer Stipe an immediate trilogy fight. So he thinks it's Ngannou versus Lewis 2. Yeah,
I agree with that. I would be surprised if Stipe got the automatic trilogy fight. I'm not, before anybody gets in the chat and says, longest run, this, that, I'm not saying it's not deserving. Stipe will have an interview. He can gladly join on Sherdog and talk to any of us, but I'm sure he'll talk to someone from ESPN, and I'm sure he's going to ask for, third fight immediately. He's going to have all his arguments like he did with Daniel Cormier. They're all going to be valid. I would be okay, if they do the matchup. But marketing-wise, no way. You got to do John Jones. You got to do it now. Why would you take the chance?
No, it's in terms of marketing, it's the fight to make. And honestly, even speaking competitively, and I'm somebody who is usually kind of skeptical of super fights. It takes a lot for me to want to see, an interdivisional super fight. But this is one of those ones where if we had the chance to have this fight happen and it never happened, if it became like the GSP versus Anderson Silva thing,
oh God, I hope
where
not.
They were there together for 4 or 5 years in their relative primes, they could have made it happen anytime. If a similar thing happens with Jones and insert name of heavyweight champ here, that'll be a bummer.
Yeah.
I noted in the Sherdog Slack, kind of as the fight was getting ready to start, that if Miocic wins and they do Miocic versus Jones, Jones is going to be taller, heavier, and have a longer reach.
Yeah.
I fully believe that, Jones is probably going to debut at heavyweight at more than 238. So.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was thinking about heavier than Ngannou. I was like, no, he's getting heavier than.
No, he won't.
Yeah, heavier.
He's alluded to weighing 270 right now, but I don't know if that's
way.
True, and I don't know if that's what he's going to weigh out of an actual camp. No.
Yeah,
not on those legs.
I want to shout out. I apologize if I say your name wrong. Taha Afzal. I apologize if I got that name wrong, but he said, if I was John Jones, I would bungle the negotiations too. Yeah.
Oh,
So
no, I completely agree. Like, do you have something to say on this? Because otherwise I do.
oh, go ahead.
Okay. I am never one to jump in for this fighter is scared of that fighter. This fighter is shook. Like, have you ever met a fighter? Do you know what these people do for a living?
Yeah,
Like,
they're the baddest
even
dudes on the
when,
planet.
like, you know, I came into this sport at the time when, like, Tito Ortiz was supposedly ducking Chuck Liddell.
And then he fought him 3 times.
Yeah, he wasn't afraid of getting punched by Chuck. They had been training partners. That was the whole point. He'd been punched by Chuck, and he didn't like it. I mean, he wasn't afraid. He knew he'd probably lose, and nobody wants that kind of professional setback or that setback to their prestige. He's not scared to fight him. But if I'm John Jones and I'm watching this, and I watch this effortless, like, stuffing of a takedown, if I see an Ngannou who makes basically no mistakes and is suddenly throwing tight, crisp, straight punches, I do start to weigh my career options, because we've been talking a little bit about legacy. We talked about it leading into this, what it does for these people's all-time legacies. This would be a legacy fight for John Jones in a huge way.
Yeah. So here's what I have to say about that. With him announcing that he's going to go heavyweight, him posting all those pictures on Instagram and that, there's no backing out now. Now it's a legacy moment, and it looks bad if you go there. Now, as Tiz, not Tiz, I lost the guy's name who said, I want to pull it up, I want to give him credit, because it was funny. Crap, I can't find it. I apologize to the guy who said, Taha Afzal, who said he would bungle the negotiations. I'm with you. You know, I could fight Francis Ngannou, or I could fight Jan Blachowicz. Like, yeah. Jan Blachowicz has looked great. He's had some great knockouts. I'm fighting Jan Blachowicz. But John Jones isn't like us. He ain't like anybody in the chat. He's not like very few people walking this earth. John Jones, if I could role play John Jones for a second, this is what he's probably thinking. I'm a better wrestler than Stipe. I was a junior college national champion. I was a New York State champion. I'm longer than Stipe. My chin is better. I've never been knocked out. Stipe's been knocked out by Daniel Cormier. I beat Daniel Cormier. Like, this is my moment. I'm faster. I'm longer. This is my chance to really prove it. And if John Jones does actually fight Francis Ngannou, all those John Jones scared, he's running from Israel Adesanya, and any John Jones was ever scared of anybody moment, that goes put to bed. Because even if he gets knocked out in 15 seconds, like Jairzinho Rosenstruck, it don't matter. John Jones has some humongous balls if you step in there with Francis. And anybody coming forward. Derek Lewis, who actually holds a win over him. A third fight. I mean, Stipe, if he fights a... Think about how... We've already given Stipe credit twice to fight him. Imagine fighting him and knowing what he can do now. You know, it's cool seeing him knock out guys, but knowing, no, he can do that to you because, yeah, he did do it to you. This is why I think this is why I feel like he has the Mike Tyson appeal. Because we're talking about the best fighters in the world literally being scared of this man. And we're not saying it's true that they're scared, but like they should be.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. John Jones, who's the greatest fighter of all time in my opinion. I don't speak for both of us, but in my opinion. He moves up to heavyweight. He's never lost. What's the betting line? So actually, that's what I want. I'm going to ask. So you tell me what the betting line is, but I want people in the chat. One word, if you guys listen to the chat, and I'm glad that I got the name Taha correct. Just one word, so we know you're answering the question. Who wins? Francis Ngannou, John Jones. So Ngannou or Jones? Just so we know who you guys think would win. And what would you think the betting line would be?
My guess would be that Jones would come in as a slight underdog. My bet would be that Jones comes in at, plus 175, plus 180, something like that. Just, his last 2 wins at lightweight were, I'm not going to say shaky, but, he took significant damage in both of them. Quite a few people thought he lost one of them. We've seen him hurt before. I still don't think he's ever been cleanly knocked down. But, I mean, we've seen him on his heels and, getting tagged before.
Yeah.
I think people are going to look at that. They're going to go with the hot hand and just look at Ngannou. And, again, just what an outstanding performance he put on tonight. And be like, Jones isn't going to like what he gets.
Yeah.
That would be my guess.
Yeah, and Arlo Bobbins, he made a good point that, it's so hard to know what John Jones is going to look at. Well, we're not going to have that option. That's why I'm throwing it out. We're not going to have that luxury. I mean, I'm assuming we don't. We got to move on. We've been talking. We're 40 minutes now talking about this. We have 9 other fights to cover.
Jay's the man on the spot, real quick.
Okay.
The current, futures line for Jones versus Ngannou. Jones plus 170. I was close. Ngannou minus 200.
That's pretty good. Plus 170. But that's in the moment. We just saw Francis Ngannou land a knockout, so that's also in the moment too. You guys are jumping in there. Let's talk about Stipe for a second. So we're assuming that the John Jones fight gets made.
Yeah.
To me, that is that's going to be sold out crowd. Back to the crowds and everything. But what does that leave Stipe now? Does he just sit on the sidelines and wait for the winner, which is an extremely marketable fight because he could get a trilogy fight against Francis Ngannou, or he gets a John Jones, greatest light heavyweight of all time versus greatest heavyweight of time or greatest fighter ever. I mean, if John Jones beats Francis Ngannou, that debate's to put to bed too. But does he sit on the sidelines or do you book him in a fight?
Well, we're talking about a guy who has literally shown us that he is willing to sit on the shelf for a year to get the rematch that he thinks he deserves.
That's a good point.
The question is, would he do that again now that he's about to turn 39? Is he going to spend his 40th birthday at home playing with his kids and playing hardball with the UFC? The UFC has a pretty good record at waiting out 40-year-old heavyweights. Just ask Couture, whom we keep coming back to and talking about. At the same time, he said that he said after he beat Cormier that he had no interest in sticking around long enough for, the number 15 guy to work his way up to fight him. So is he just going to want to take another paycheck against a solid up-and-comer? I don't know.
Yeah, we might not have the luxury. So I want to jump in there because Arlo made a good point, which was actually what I was going to ask next. If Stipe does, which is a very good chance he plays hardball and he's like, no, I'm sitting out. I want the automatic rematch against Ngannou, or I want John Jones, whatever. What do you do with Derek Lewis? Because you can't make them both sit out. Because Derek Lewis deserves a shot too. Say what you want. Lewis deserves a shot, and he actually has a win. It was one of the worst fights of all time, but you could spin that. You don't really show. You don't say it was terrible, and all the hardcores would know. All the real fans would know, but the casuals, you show Derek Lewis knocking people out, saying funny shit. Francis Ngannou knocking people out. Then you say, wow, everyone's scared of Francis Ngannou. He's beating everybody. But he hasn't beaten Derek Lewis. No, you just show him raising the hand. You get the good editor who takes every single punch landed and you put that in a highlight. There's definitely ways to do it. But, you can't make Francis... what do? You got to have both guys sitting on the sideline. So if you book Francis Ngannou versus John Jones, say 4 months from now, and then 4 months later you do Stipe, and then 4 months later you have Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis has already been sent out for a month. Then you got another 12 months. He's sitting out over a year. I don't know. I'm asking, what do you do with Derek Lewis then?
I don't know either, man. I have the feeling. Well, I mean, Lewis said he wanted to fight Alistair Overeem, but then they cut Overeem. So Lewis is clearly not averse to just taking a fight, getting the paycheck. But I mean, do they make him fight Ciryl Gane or somebody?
Yeah, no, that's true. You probably have to go down to that next one. The thing, I mean, to me, the best case scenario. Now, this is if no one has a say. We like to do this a lot. We like to say no one has a say. We're the ultimate emperors. We're the dictators. To me, best case scenario would be Ngannou versus Jones, Miocic versus Lewis in a four-way. Even put them on the same card, co-main event. That would to me would be the ultimate solution. Do you agree?
I think almost all the outcomes there are friendly outcomes to the UFC, unless Miocic ruins a Lewis Ngannou rematch. Because the thing is, you mentioned kind of how marketable it would be, and tell me that in their hearts of hearts, both Lewis and Ngannou don't think that they would win the rematch easily. They both think they would beat the other guy. They both are like, I just want to forget that fight. They both think they're better than the other guy, but I bet especially Ngannou does.
Yeah.
I bet Ngannou thinks he could beat Lewis with his hands tied behind his back right now.
Yeah. Imagine if they actually, what we thought we were going to get in the first round, if they both actually, at one point stepped in the pocket and throw those shots. Imagine that, the gasping of air every time they did that, of who's going, because is as hard of a hitter as Francis Ngannou is, if anybody can match him, it's Derek Lewis.
Yep.
I want to throw out a good thing we haven't thought about yet by John Owens. What if this is the end of it? Like, what if Stipe retires? I mean, this is a guy, he just had a baby. He's a, fireman. He likes doing that. He's up there. He's never seemed like one that, he doesn't love the limelight. He talks about that all the time. Like, he doesn't like doing interviews. He's
dude. He walked out to an MGK song tonight with MGK actually sitting in the arena and didn't have him walk him out or rap him out or anything. That's how much he doesn't need the pageantry of this.
That is why Ben is so much cooler, because one, I have no idea what the hell MJK, I don't know what that means.
MGK, he's a rapper from Cleveland.
Okay, so you got a rap. Is that the guy who was next to Kardashian or one of them?
Well, no, that was Travis Barker from Blink 182.
Okay.
It was the other couple.
The one with Megan Fox.
Machine Gun Kelly. Yeah.
Oh, the guy that was beefing with Eminem.
Yeah, Eminem blew him all the way out of the rap game and into pop punk, but that's a conversation.
Okay,
for
so
I
didn't know. I didn't. Yeah. That's. I can talk your ear off about '90s rap, but I don't really understand today's rap or hip hop or whatever. I'm sure people in the chat will make fun of me for that. I couldn't pick out one of his songs, but you actually have the guy in attendance. Like, what? I think let him. Yeah, that's probably Stipe. If they even gave him the option, he'd probably turn it down.
Yep.
He walked out with his song. He probably wouldn't even meet him. Even if he won, he probably wouldn't even meet him. I mean, meet him. He wouldn't. I'm not saying Stipe's a jerk. I'm saying he wouldn't go out of his way to find the guy. If the guy wanted to talk to him, sure. Yeah, I don't expect, Miocic to hanging up, but it wouldn't shock me if this was it. Would it shock you?
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't shock me. Honestly, if he did retire, I think it would be because he had decided it was rematch or bust, and he was just like, screw it. Because I mean, he has shown his I know I just said this, but he's shown his willingness to just sit. He's not gonna just take a paycheck fight if he thinks what he deserves is a rematch. I'm not saying he deserves one or not, but he's shown himself to be principled in that regard.
Yeah. I don't know. I apologize if I'm saying this name wrong.
Don't apologize. These aren't their real names.
No, I know. I'm trying. I'm trying. Listen, I'm trying to get as much people to like us as possible. Yeah. Or you just have this unbelievable personality. They're gonna like you no matter what.
That's really not true.
But I'm Bass Ilk Mink. It's just a bunch of BASLKMG. However you want to pronounce that. He or she said, tonight felt like a breath of fresh air from the past 2 weeks. I totally understand that when you had that weirdness of Kevin Holland, Derek Brunson fight last week. 2 weeks ago, the whole... Oh, this is Bass. I'm sorry, Bass. We did this last time. Bass, I'm sorry. It's our buddy Bass. Sorry, my man. Yeah, you do. Thanks, man. I apologize, dude. You know what? I'm gonna use the excuse. I got COVID. Give me a break. But yeah, Bass. Shout out to my man Bass. That guy's he's fantastic, by the way. Bass. Yeah, and then you had the Leon Edwards, the eye pokes, and then if you even go back to the last pay-per-view, the whole Aljamain Sterling Pechayan thing. So yeah, I agree. It was a great card. I'm sure we're both gonna give it really high grades at the end. Yeah. So. Time to move. I think is there anything else you want to talk about, or should we move on?
Nope. Let's move on.
I think we've gone a long time in main events. We went a really long time. We almost went almost an hour. We went about with a countdown, about 45 minutes. Before that, we had Tyron Woodley versus Vicente Lucay. The former welterweight champion was trying to stop a really bad run. It did not go well for Tyron Woodley as Vicente Lucay took him out. First round submission. We talked about this, that I wasn't excited to see Tyron Woodley return. I'm glad it wasn't him backed against the cage, getting beat up for 15 minutes, not throwing punches, which I expected. Outpunched 3-1. So I'm glad that he went down, throwing. But it's also sad to see this. Now, I think he had the right strategy. I like to come out wrestling. I like to come out throwing big, hard punches. I think that strategy was going to last about 3 minutes. But I would rather him give me 3 minutes of actually trying to win than 15 minutes to do nothing. So I liked the strategy. Unfortunately, he made the mistake of telegraphing his shots. He did hurt. In fairness, he did hurt Lucay. He almost put him out. But he started telegraphing, and Lucay started throwing punches. And the straight shot beats the looping shot. And there's a lot to talk about. This is a very short fight, but there's a lot to talk about. I want to talk about the stoppage first. Shout out to Brent Brookhouse, CBS, very good journalist. I was talking to him on Twitter about the stoppage. He said that it was a sad moment when Woodley was hurt and stumbled across the cage. He couldn't hold himself up. Almost had like a Kimbo Slice Dada 5000 feel to it, where like his legs are gone when the cage keeps him up. He said that the fight should have been stopped then. I actually kind of agree with it.
I agree, because Woodley had to grab the fence to keep from falling down.
Yeah, I agree. He was down to me. Brent mentioned that when the submission was in, it was not so much that he didn't try to block it because he was trying to, get his brains together. I agree with it. Like I thought it should have been stopped before the grappling ever happened.
Yep, could have been stopped a few times.
Arlo points out that it's been 16 rounds in a row that Tyron Woodley has lost. He's lost we'll have to say it again. He's lost to studs. I mean, Kamaru Usman, Gilbert Burns, Colby Covington, the three best welterweights probably on planet Earth, and then Vicente Lucay, who's not that far down. Mm-mm. That said, this just looks like it's just going to keep rolling to me. Like, do you agree? I mean, if he takes a step down and he starts fighting top 15 guys, will he, like lower 15, or is he going to do? I don't think he's going to do better. I think this is what's going to continue to happen. And plus the damage he took tonight. I mean, I think he's done. I'll just say it. I think Tyron Woodley's done.
I will say that I felt very strongly he was going to lose tonight, no matter what. I, laid out my reasons on the preview why Vicente Lucay was a terrible matchup for Woodley. But I am assuming he's going to get cut. And if he was going to get cut tonight, his performance tonight left me with more interest in seeing him fight middling welterweights in Bellator than if he had just laid another egg and thrown 40 strikes in 3 rounds and landed 11 of them.
Yeah.
And just got pieced up by Lucay all night. This at least made me say, hey, I'll watch him fight, Ed Ruth. I'll watch him fight not Fitch. That would be a tough fight to watch. But
I think Fitch is technically retired, but like Neiman Gracie.
Yeah, Woodley showed a spark of life. He went out and contrary to what I expected, he fought to his best advantage. He took the game plan that actually gave him the best chance of winning. It led, now the trade-off is it led to a more spectacular loss. He went down in flames, but Woodley hasn't even gone down in flames in his last couple fights. He's just looked so deflated.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people are saying in the chat. I agree. Like he went out on his shield, as Bass mentioned. Yeah, I agree. I think he gave himself the best chance of winning, as we talked about. One thing, one note I wrote down, and I didn't follow it. I wish I did. I wrote down, "Don't forget about Vicente Lucay" for a second, which kind of happened, which we've been talking. All of you been talking about this Tyron Woodley. Got to give props for props to do. I mean, Lucay has always been to this level and then kind of fell. Or actually, I shouldn't say he's always been to this level. He only had one shot. It was Stephen Thompson, and he got trashed. Mm-hmm. It's nice for a guy that's gone win after win and been on this long run to get such a big moment. You know, co-main event, massive pay-per-view. I don't know about you, but like a lot of people reached out to me this week, so I think it's going to do well overall pay-per-views. You know, co-main. You know, like I moved to the co-main event, former champion. Just if I don't know if he's gonna way he can spring from this or what's gonna happen, but it's nice to see a guy, such a likable guy. But he said something. He said, "My chin is good. I don't like to use it, but it seems like he always does." But credit to him, because that's one thing about Tyron Woodley. He hasn't lost his power. I mean, we saw that. So, yeah, I mean, good win by Vicente Lucay.
Good win, and that was one of the reasons that he's a bad matchup for Woodley, is that he gets in firefights almost every time out, and he wins them.
Yeah.
Like Randy Brown, Nico Price, Mike Perry, Bilal Muhammad, who is like, you know, Bilal Muhammad is at the apex of his visibility and his career right now. All those guys got into absolute wars with Lucay, and Lucay beat all of them because he can take a punch, because he can recover, because he can land his own. Like, that's why, like, Woodley just had nowhere to go. Woodley's not good at winning rounds, and Woodley's best, you know, chance, just hit him with a kill shot. Lucay's, you know, he's taken a lot of them and he's been fine.
Yeah. Shout out to our buddy T. Dot. I appreciate you joining the show. He asked about John Jones. I'm assuming he's not asking about John Jones being next with Vicente Lucay. I'm assuming he's talking about Francis Ngannou. T. Dot, yeah, we talked about it for about almost 45 minutes. I know you're just coming in now. When this is done, it'll be on YouTube. Just rewind, check out. We talked about it for a long time, but I appreciate you joining us. Who was it? I apologize again. Oh, buddy Taha again mentioned people mentioning Tyron Woodley as the greatest welterweight. I don't know anybody who mentioned other than Tyron Woodley is calling himself the greatest welterweight. Let's do this though. If Tyron Woodley is cut from the UFC, if Tyron Woodley never fights again, like he's a guy I wouldn't be surprised if he hung it up. Seems kind of disinterested for a while now. He had he's had weirder and weirder weeks, media weeks. I was on the media call this week for sure, representing Sherdog. It seemed very weird. Like he's always had other things. If this is the last we see of Tyron Woodley, what is his legacy? What do you think of him?
I think he is. I mean, he's on a relatively short list of the greatest welterweights ever.
Wow.
I wouldn't necessarily.
I don't think there's a list. I think it's one man.
Well, I would concede that, and
okay.
I wouldn't put Woodley second. I think, Matt Hughes is probably still second.
Might be the current champion right now.
Then you're getting down to it because. I mean, Woodley, his number of title defenses and the people he's beaten actually looks really good on paper. Just the question is, was he a late bloomer who kind of came along at just the right time to put together a really nice run? Well, if you say that, you could say the same thing about Pat Miocic.
Yeah. Well, I won't leave. See, let's do this. Let's do our real quick. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but. I don't want to give Woodley his time if this is the last we see of him. The Mount Rushmore of welterweights. George St. Pierre's obviously on there. We're both putting Matt Hughes on there.
Honestly, if there's a Mount Rushmore of welterweights, it should be just GSP with the kimono on, GSP eating a Big Mac, and GSP like fighting Captain America, and the rest of them can go on the back.
Fair enough.
But, yeah, I would say Hughes would be he'd be second.
Okay, so GSP has a spot. Hughes got a spot. I would put Usman on mine right now already.
I would put Usman ahead of Woodley at this point.
Okay, so the final spot. Is the final spot going to Tyron Woodley?
I might think of something else later, but off the top of my head, right now, I think you would.
Yeah, to me, I mean, you mentioned Pat Miocic. To me, he had lost. Well, he was a champion. He had losses outside the UFC. BJ Penn wasn't there long enough in the division.
Well, here are the only people that have ever
he beat Robbie Lawler. He beat Robbie Lawler for the title.
Here are the people that have even ever defended the UFC welterweight title: Kamaru Usman 3 times, Tyron Woodley 4 times, Robbie Lawler twice, GSP 9 times, and Matt Hughes a total of 7 across 2 different reigns.
2 reigns, yeah.
Miocic 4 times.
So it was Woodley and Miocic both at 4?
Woodley and Miocic both at 4. They both have problems. You know, Woodley, one of his defenses was a draw.
That's true.
One, was Damian Maia on short notice. So, I mean, you can make quibbles with it. Same as with Miocic, where he was going out and losing badly outside the UFC. So just the optics of it are real bad, even though his UFC record looks good.
Yeah.
I already think Usman's 3 defenses are more impressive than Woodley's 4.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. Especially because, like, even the win over Damian Maia where he blew him out, it was kind of an ugly win. Robbie Lawler would also be. So to me, it was coming down to Lawler and Woodley, but Woodley has a win over Lawler. So Woodley would make mine. It seemed like people are liking our discussion. People throwing out Pat Miocic. Darren Seska mentioned the great out Frank Trigg. I was always a fan of Frank Trigg because he's one of the first good trash talkers, but he's more famous for his losses than his wins.
That's it.
Let's matchmake real quick, and then we'll move on from the co-main event. Vicente Lucay, biggest win of his career. What do you do next for him? And this is, no one can say no. We're in charge. Who are you matching with?
Yeah, I'm looking right now. I think he probably deserves a top 10 guy.
I agree.
I would like to see him, get a second chance at Leon Edwards. I wouldn't mind Bilal Muhammad getting a second chance at him. I don't really need to see him fight Stephen Thompson again. I wouldn't mind seeing him fight Jeff Neal.
So, yeah, sorry. I apologize for laughing while you're saying that. I just laughed at Arlo. Oh, he's talking about who he should fight next. Michelle Pahea. I was thinking you were talking about for the Mount Rushmore, Michelle Pahea.
Oh no.
That's why I laughed. You know what, guys? It's like, I don't know. It's 1:49 a.m. in the East Coast. So and I got COVID. So give me some slack. I went with Chiesa. That's the fight I would do. I like your matchups. It's we always talk about. It's such a great. Baz agrees. He mentioned Chiesa. It's just a great division that it's hard, especially near the top. It's hard to make bad matchups. So I would do Chiesa. You gave a bunch of options. I'm not even gonna bother with Woodley.
No, I mean.
Arlo was talking about Mount Rushmore. Yeah, I had me laughing.
His feet can be helicoptering out the top of it.
Yeah, just have him like upside down. His face is upside down. He's got arms. He's got arms in it. Before that, Sugar Sean O'Malley in one of the knockouts of the year candidates over Thomas Ameda.
Which one?
So there was a train or a bandwagon going down the highway after he lost to Marlon Vera. People were jumping off. I did not jump off. I doubled down. I've been on the Sugar Sean O'Malley hype train. I was driving it. I am continuing to drive it. I'm all in on this guy. He's so elusive. He's got great length. He understands distance. He uses feints. He's got variety in his attacks. He's got power, precision. I'm all in. To me, I think this guy's a contender one day. I mean, I'm not contender one day. I think he's a contender now. I think he could be a future champion. I'm not picking him to win the title, but I'm not picking him to win the title. I'm all in. I mean, talk me off. Like this train's going. Are you jumping aboard or are you gonna slow down the track?
No, I'm aboard. In my column ahead of this event, I listed him as one of the fighters on the card that had a little more at stake than just the straight W or L. And what he had at stake was remind us why it is we cared about you. Remind us why we were so excited about you. Because when he has 9 months to do nothing but like be salty about his last loss and ask like inappropriate questions about his coworkers on his podcast, like, dude, just get this guy back in the cage. Like, let him remind us like what he's really good at, what he's really good for. In a lot of ways, what he reminds me of, and not in the straight lines of how his game looks, but it reminds me of Conor McGregor. He's capable of putting on breathtaking performances in the cage. He has a certain, for lack of a better word, a certain arrogance outside the cage. Whether you love him or hate him for it, he clearly sees himself as a future celebrity and a future champ. And like McGregor, they need to keep this dude busy so he doesn't get himself in trouble.
Yeah. So the perfect thing is going on. You mentioned you got to love or hate Sean O'Malley. You mentioned that. And what I love is going on in the comments right now. That's exactly what's happening. We got one person saying he's so hard to like, and another one saying like I'm a super fan. Like you're on a different side of the fence. Now me and you, we're media members. We don't. When I say I'm on the bandwagon, I know Ben means the same thing. We mean like I believe in this guy's talent. I think he's going to be a star. I'm not rooting for him to. I do root for my picks when we do the breakdown show. But I'm not rooting for them. I'm rooting for myself because I want to be right. Because I have a huge ego. But we're not rooting either way. I root for a story. I root for something exciting to talk about on the show. We got tons of exciting stuff to talk about. But
I don't have quite the same insistence on impartiality that you do. Like I'm happy to say that O'Malley's personality just kind of leaves me cold.
Okay.
I'm too old. He just reminds me of a gamer like barely older than my kids. And ironically and kind of anecdotally, I'll say, I have teenage kids and they know what I do for a living. None of them particularly care about combat sports.
Damn them.
But Sean O'Malley's the only fighter that they've asked me about.
There you go. You mentioned
where
that.
It's kind of like, hey, is this Sugar Show guy, like, is he any good? And I was like, yeah, he is very good, blah, blah, blah. But he's the only one. They've never asked me about,
I think you need different personalities. And he's such a unique personality. Now, you have the Conor McGregor. He's not Conor McGregor. He has a different personality. He has a kind of a Jake Paul type personality, or that kind of, but you need that. That's going to attract certain people. You can't have all white, mid-America, Oklahoma, wrestlers who, thank Jesus after their wins. And I'm not insulting. I'm a Christian myself, but we got to have, and before the second knockout, because there was really 2 knockouts. He had the first knockout. He tried doing a walk-off. It would have been spectacular if they stopped the fight, but that didn't happen. He did make a mistake, as DC and Jogan wouldn't stop talking about it. They were still talking about it deep in the 3rd round when he looks like he's going to win. They just kept talking about that. But the walk-off is him. That's part of his personality. He's the Sugar Show all the time. He's the Flash all the time. Don't try changing that. Embrace that. That's why, last week when I was saying, the Kevin Holland trash talking didn't, it sucks that he doesn't win, but, I still entertained by the trash. That's him. Don't change him. It's like when we were trying to, Demetrius Johnson, we're doing the opposite. We're like, maybe he needs a trash talk. Well, that's not him. You can't fake it. Yeah. I love the personality. I love everything about Sean O'Malley. I love his skill. I love his person. I love it.
I take back the McGregor comparison. I think it's a better comparison to call him a Montana, Northern Plains, Israel Adesanya.
Okay. Yeah.
Their games line up a little better. They're both younger generation guys that you can tell they learned their trash talk and probably most of their social skills with a headset on. He's much more of a rainbow-haired Israel Adesanya.
Yeah, like if we were doing
that's a good thing to be. Israel Adesanya is one of the biggest stars in the sport right now.
That's right. Yeah. And that's what like why wrestling is so popular. There's so many different personalities. The more personalities, like the better. That's why I forgot who mentioned that says we don't have the Mike Tyson personality. We need the Mike Tyson personality. We need someone who's kind of crazy and I mean Mike Perry might be a little bit, but you know, we need a little bit of that in MMA. I'm flow with this guy. What do we do next with him? You have a name? I have a name that I don't know. People throw out there, who would you like to see Sean O'Malley fight next? But what would you do with Sean O'Malley next?
I know. No, Rob Font just got a date.
Yeah, he's fighting Cody Garbrandt.
Yeah, it's Font versus Garbrandt, and it's Sandhagen fighting Dillashaw. I think the winners of those two fights are probably a step too far for O'Malley. I'd like to see him take on a grinder, who like maybe a Rafael Assunção type.
Okay. Yeah, I don't hate that. That was actually a name I thought of. I didn't go as high. I want to address one of the guys mentioned he said that technically that McGregor and O'Malley isn't similar, but you weren't talking technically. You were talking outside.
Yeah, not in terms of the specifics of their game at all. No, just their persona. But
there is some. They both have incredible step back left hands, both of them. So I just wanted to say that not everything about their game is, but they both. Jimmy Rare's name got thrown out there like that. Marad's I want to do that. So the name I came up with. I came up with Kyler Phillips, the Matrix. I just think that would be such incredible. They're both high-flying, athleticism, young. I just think that would be such a marketable fight. That's what I would do. I would do Kyler Phillips, the Matrix versus the Sugar Show. That's what I would do. You went more of the ranking style, which is okay, which is normally what we like to do. But
well, I mean, in terms of ranking and like the style test, I mean, Merab. I think the reason I made the McGregor comparison in the first place is that I feel as though O'Malley's getting to the place where McGregor was, where his detractors, like the ones that just hate him so bad that, you know, they were like, well, McGregor hasn't faced a real wrestler yet.
Yeah, it's the Chad Mendes fight.
Yeah, and there's like, well, he hasn't faced a real wrestler, you know, that wasn't on short notice. Like, we're almost to the point where O'Malley's detractors are just going to have to be like, well, he's never faced a real good wrestler who, you know, could take a punch and was determined to get him down. That's Merab.
Yeah. So Bass said not the Matrix until you have it, which is usually what I like to do. I like to keep the prospects away from each other. But I have O'Malley on such a higher level than the Matrix, which I don't think he'll ever reach higher where it would make sense. So that's why I want to do it now. Like I should, if they were on the same level, then I agree. I just have O'Malley higher. That's why I want to do it. I don't.
Statmaster J points out that Phillips and O'Malley did train together at the MMA lab.
Oh,
I don't know if Phillips is still there.
Yeah, and I know O'Malley's there, but he has like his own kind of team thing. Yeah, Jay's on top of it, man. Jay's fantastic. Let's move on. Before that, Miranda Maverick beat Jillian Robertson by unanimous decision. It was a close fight. It was 1 round each going into the third round. I am super impressed by Miranda Maverick. She was someone that I was very high on heading in. I'm still feeling that way. When you look at her, did the second round have you like think less of her, or are you like me where I'm actually thinking more of her? Where do you stand?
I was impressed with her poise. I mean, she was absolutely in Robertson's world for the entire round. I was shocked that 2 of the judges did not give that round to Robertson. How could you not give her that round?
Oh, you know what? I didn't even pay attention
to that. 3 minutes of back control.
Wait a minute. Wait, hold on. 2 judges gave it 30. I was tweeting.
Maverick got 2 30-27 scorecards.
I mean, she had a flurry at the last 10 seconds of the round, but not enough to steal the whole round.
I watched the second round, and I talked myself out of giving it a 10-8 for Robertson because I was like, well, yeah, she had a ton of back control, but she threw almost no ground strikes, and the only real submission attempt was like a no hooks rear naked choke. So I said, don't get carried away. This wasn't a 10-8. It was just, a very one-sided 10-9. So that was that's the
I'm with you.
I came from.
I'm with you. I'm more. I didn't give it a 10-9. I gave it. I gave it a 10-9. I didn't give it a 10-8.
Yeah.
But to me, I'm closer to going 10-8 for Robinson that round than 10-9 for Maverick. So okay, so that was stupid. Move on. I'll tell you why I was super impressed by Miranda Maverick. Well, first of all, her stand-up was incredible tonight. She was on point. Her stand-up was great. But what I loved is, one, as you just mentioned, she was in bad position in the second round, didn't panic. But what I was most impressed of, going into the third round, I go, okay, she can't lose, she can't lose a grappling match in the third round. She's got to avoid the grappling. She's got to make it stand up like she did for most of the first round. And that's not what happened. After getting dominated in the grappling in the second round, she goes on. It's mostly grappling the third round, and she wins the grappling and wins it pretty decisively. Which she had some bad positions in the second round, which she had the back, brief armbar, which doesn't look like it was that close. But that's what really impressed me. This girl is young. She's well-rounded. She has composure. And she's a full-time college student. And I don't remember what her degree is, but she's getting her doctorate in something like crazy brainiac thing. Like, I'm so sold on this girl. Like, she was one of my favorite prospects in MMA, and I'm like, I don't know if maybe I'm living in the moment again, but I'm super excited for Miranda Maverick. Yeah, people in the chat, are you with me? Or Ben, you seem pretty excited too.
I'm like you. I'm big on Maverick. I, said I compare her, to Aspen Ladd, and you can argue that Aspen Ladd is still like the prime prospect under about the age of 28 in any women's division. My only concern is that she seems to be having increasing trouble with her weight cut.
Yeah.
Now, part of that might be that she is a full-time student, a part-time teacher, working on a PhD, and, fighters tend to be able to shift a gear when they are doing nothing but training, and she may never be just by choice. But if we get to the point where her choice is to either be a dehydrated and possibly compromised flyweight or a 5'3" bantamweight, she's going to hit a wall.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so she's in the Midwest. She trains on a really small team. But that said, I was really impressed with her team.
She trains in Virginia with
okay, so not the Midwest, the coast.
She goes to Old Dominion. She trains with Mack and Semmerser, who you might remember from tapping out Wagner Fabiano in WEC.
But I was so impressed with that coaching. That's one of the things I tweeted out. I was so impressed with what the advice they gave her in the third round. Like, everything straight. No hooks, nothing to let open up. Everything's straight. It's hard to get by straight. You start throwing hooks, you open up your hips because you're throwing hooks. Everything's coming on the outside. You kind of like, they used to call it wrestling the kitchen. Don't let anybody in your kitchen kind of thing. I was really impressed with that, the way they talked it through. I was super impressed. But, that's an area, I don't know, what's the nutritionist area? Who's working her diet? And I'm just asking the question. I'm not, by no means am I bashing her team. I was so impressed with them, so I'm doing the opposite. Just the questions. You go to an American Top Team, you go to Sanford MMA, there's obviously bigger teams, there's more resources. I don't know what the resources are there. She could have fantastic nutritionists. I have no idea.
She could, and it may just be a thing of where, she can only put in 20 hours in the gym a week rather than 40 or 50. So, yeah. She is pursuing a PhD in industrial organizational psychology at Old Dominion University. So I could barely say that.
Yeah.
And I'm a really smart guy.
When I interviewed her, she mentioned that, and I said, "Yeah, I'm not even smart enough to give a follow-up question on that. I just move along." You try to ask a follow-up question to seem interested, and no, I can't do that. But before that, kicking off the main card, Kama Worthy took on Jamie Malarkey. And Jamie Malarkey won by first round knockout. No, first I'm going to say, I mentioned the last time, I thought Jamie Malarkey should have won his last fight. Old news. But moving on, fake right hand, come around, left hook. That was a fantastic combination.
Yes.
I don't know what else to say. Great of Jamie Malarkey. This is the guy that when I did film study, he was one of the guys. I always tell people this is how I do my previews. Before I watch any film of the fight, I write down who I think is going to win, and I want to see if the film study changes my mind. and this was one of the fights that changed my mind. I had Kama Worthy, and I changed my mind. And when I said about Malarkey, I was like, wow, this guy's much better than I remember him on film. Like, what I remembered of him, he was much better. And, I'm doubling down again. Like, he looked, I mean, it's one punch, but this is supposed to be striker versus grappler, and the grappler won by knockout.
Yeah, this is one of the 2 fights on the night, I believe, that you and I picked differently, and you were right both times.
What happened? I didn't hear it. You broke up. Say that again.
I said this was one of the 2 fights on the night that you and I picked differently, and you were right both times. Malarkey looked...
Ben, you broke up the very, very end. What was the last thing you said?
That you were right on both of the fights that we picked.
Yeah, Ben. Yeah. I was joking. I was messing with you. Just messing with you. I also got the main event wrong, so.
I expected Worthy would be able to take Malarkey's best shots, and I was flat wrong in 45 seconds. So, a fantastic performance for him. Just, it snaps a 2-fight losing streak, regardless of how you feel about the specific fights of that streak. It doesn't look good on paper to lose your 3rd straight, especially in such a crowded division. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, he looked fantastic.
Yeah. One thing I love, it seems like those people from that era, if you lose to a city kickboxing guy, you suddenly joins the team. Like Shane Young did it, Jamie Malarkey did it.
They just absorb you like the board.
Yeah, it's like the old days of Alexander the Great. He would like take over the area, and if there was like any soldiers left, like no, you join our army. You don't become slaves. Worthy, is his chin gone? It's been 2 fights in a row that he got knocked out in very quick fashion.
You do have to kind of worry because he had a lot of knockout losses even coming into the UFC. I think he had like 5 knockout losses coming in. He's 34 years old. He fights at a pretty deliberate pace, I think, to kind of help protect against that. Like I made the joke on the preview that like he called himself the Death Star because it takes him like half the movie to like charge up the laser before he finally like sends out his kill shot. Yeah, you do have to wonder about it.
Yeah. So let's move on. We covered the main card. Let's cover the prelims in the headlining prelim fight. Fabio Charant took a fight on 3 days' notice in his UFC debut, and he just wasn't ready. Alonzo Menifield picked him up, slammed him, and then Von Flue choke. Can I just talk about the Von Flue choke for a second?
Sure.
Guys, what does Jason Von Flue have? Can we stop trying to take the name from him? Like, OSP will be remembered afterwards, like when he retires. Like, he's a great... Yes, I understand he had more submissions with it, but come on. What else does Jason Von Flue have? I love that an obscure fighter has a move named after him.
I completely agree. Let the man keep like his claim to fame.
Let him have it. Anyways, Ben, you're a person from Texas who took a New Englander to win. I'm a New Englander who took the Texaner to win. Besides who was right or wrong, but should we like from now on, if a Texas and a New Englander fight, like I should have to go down the ship with New England and you go down the ship with Texas? Like should that be like a rule?
Well, it's apparently I've signed myself up for it already. I knew I was taking a little bit of a flyer. He was a plus like 240 underdog or whatever for good reason. But
I give you credit for that.
I said, if he gets out of the first round, I just don't trust Alonzo Menifield to be able to beat anybody. He had some horrible gas tank issues, some serious kind of defensive fight IQ lapses. I said those are things that Charant could take advantage of. It didn't get there. And Menifield, yeah, I mean, to scoop him up and slam him was impressive. To mash him into the fence, so basically he couldn't let go of that guillotine if he wanted to, was a bit of brilliant work. Charant looked calm, but he was about to go out and he had to tap. Great performance from Alonzo Menifield.
Yeah, shout out to Darren Seska who mentioned the Von Prue choke, kind of like a Von Prue, like add them together, like give them both credit. Like, oh yeah, all right. We can give
that, yeah.
We can have it like a duel. So who won on the pick? I won that one. Thanks, Darren. I did pick that one right. Come on, I had the heavy favorite. Do you give so? It was a terrible performance, but Sharon. But do you give him a pass taking on 3 days' notice? Because I don't. To me, I would have given him a pass if he gassed out. I would have given him a pass if but to get picked up, slammed, and now I'm not messing up with Von flu choked in quick fashion. To me, that would have happened if he had 8 weeks to train.
It was a bad performance, but I mean, he was coming off a pretty good 3-fight win streak after his loss on the Contender Series. I thought of him as a guy who would probably be UFC material, or at least worth a try. I'd still like to see him against a UFC quality light heavyweight on a full camp. I mean, he's still just 26 years old.
Yeah, he's LFA champ, so he was a champion of a good organization.
Yeah, he won the LFA title like 5 weeks ago.
Yeah,
he's still just 26 years old, and kind of like I said on the preview, even though you look at him, he's like got 7 wins and 5 are by submission. He's a surprisingly good striker. Like I think, and maybe he'll lose 3 more in a row before I learn my lesson. But I feel as though there's something there with Saran.
Yeah. So Ben is all sold on the New Englander, while the New Englander myself is not sold yet on. And not only is he New Englander, but he trains right here in Rhode Island. So he's really local. He trains like, I don't know, 10 minutes down the road. But I guess if you live in Rhode Island, everything's 10 minutes down the road. And you mentioned it. He did just fight. Arlo mentioned it too. He did just have not only did he win the title, but it was a 5-round fight. So that, you know what, you guys are probably right. I probably should give him a pass. That was, and he took it on 3 days notice. So that is a good point. Before that, as we were patting ourselves on the back, this is the one we can't pat ourselves on the back. We both of our upset specials was Jared Gooden beating Abubakar Nurmagomedov. That did not happen. Abubakar Nurmagomedov trashed him. It was a 30-27 across the board. 2 things. I think Jared Gordon had a terrible strategy. He was hanging his hands low, and I'll tell you why I hated the strategy. I understand what he was trying to, keep my hands low to block takedowns. I still believe the best thing is what Miranda Maverick's team was saying. Throw straight punches, specifically going down to the body with straight punches. But why I don't like his strategy, when you hang your hands low, you got to have 2 things going, and I don't think Jared Gooden has either one. One, you have to have excellent head movement, excellent, world class. Because if not, you got to get hit. And I don't think Jared Gooden has excellent world class head movement. The second thing is you have to be a very good counter striker, because if you lead the dance throwing from your hips, up jabbing and stuff, you can see it coming. But if you're the counter striker where you're using their attacks, it benefits you because the punches are coming from down low and they come from angles they're not seeing while they're attacking, which is why one of the most famous counter strikers that kind of hangs hands low with, probably the most famous up jab there is. And if you understand what I'm talking about, up jab is a jab that kind of comes, it doesn't come straight out. You almost aim high on the forehead and it comes from down low, if you guys understand what I'm saying. One of the greatest up jabbers is also one of the greatest counter strikers ever, and that's Floyd Mayweather Jr. He throws the up jab. He keeps his hands low. That's not Jared Gooden. So that's why I hate his strategy. But I don't want to take away from Nurmagomedov. I thought it was his best performance of his career. And I'll tell you, go ahead.
No, I'm glad because I agree, but what did you see?
So, well, the two weaknesses that we said was, not, the Nurmagomedov stereotype of not being a great striker, which I thought not only did he win a strikeout matchup, he looked fast too, much faster than I've seen before. He's always had a good jab, but I saw the secondary punches. He was landing it right. He actually switched. He switched stances a couple times, but also he didn't fade, and that was the thing that we talked about. He's a guy who faded late. He was actually coming on stronger. He started turning into wrestling where he's kind of had to abandon his wrestling in the 3rd round because he fades. He's actually added wrestling. To me, it was just a really pillar-to-post performance. I thought it was a really good. I don't know if he's going to make my Bulls and Bears, but he was considered at least for my Bulls and Bears.
Yeah, I agree. The problems that I had with him going in, and these are problems relatively speaking. I thought he's a very good fighter. That he's not the elite athlete that Khabib is. But yeah, he looked fast, and his gas tank was good. Like his hands just looked much faster and much sharper than they have in any of his previous fights, and he executed a really good game plan. Like, he's been characterized by some lapses before. He should have punted David Zavada into the third row, and instead he dove right into a triangle choke.
Yeah.
There was no chance of that tonight. Part of the problem is that after about 2 minutes in, Gooden just seemed really stymied. He never got into his comfort zone, and so he had almost no hope of winning because he spent the rest of the fight just kind of throwing single shots, and he's not a single shot kill shot guy really.
No, he's not.
And looked really, really bent on not getting taken down, but also didn't like what he was getting from Nurmagomedov on the feet. It was just a bad performance for Gooden. I'm not completely off his bandwagon. I think he has some good tools, and this was a strangely flat performance from him. But yeah, all credit to Nurmagomedov. This was a great performance.
Yeah, I didn't think Gooden had a good performance against Alan Jouban. I thought it was a poor performance. I thought this was really poor performance. Before that, and guys, I'm going to butcher these names. I'm going to try as good as I can. Michael Oleksiejczuk won a decision over Modestas Bukauskas. I don't know. Help me out. Modestas
Bukauskas.
Yeah,
yes.
You were fantastic at those. I even tried to write them down phonetically as they say them, and I still screwed them up. Let's get right to it. Did you agree with the decision? Because I didn't.
No, I mean, even as someone, I picked Oleksiejczuk
going
in. But I thought this was a pretty straightforward. Bukauskas won the first 2 rounds, and Oleksiejczuk won the last one. I thought the first round was kind of close.
Sure, I agree.
Oleksiejczuk seemed busier, landed more, but Bukauskas landed harder. He was the only one that had his opponents in any real peril in that round.
Yeah.
So I gave it to Bukauskas 10-9 without much thought. But apparently I was in the minority, at least on the judging benches, because...
Well,
yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I looked up MMA decisions, and I don't know if any. I know sometimes they'll be updated as we go. Sometimes I don't get them live. But when I looked live, there was 18 scorecards scored, including both yours and mine, and it was 17-1 in favor of Bukauskas.
Who's the one?
The one was. I didn't write it down. I'm trying to remember. It was
Drake Riggs.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't Drake. It was Vernon Wells' brother. Matt. Sorry, I apologize, Matt. Okay. I'm sure he's not listening. It's 2:18 in the morning. I apologize. Yeah, Matt Wells. He does many sites. Yep. Now I'm actually starting to question: was he the one? I feel really bad if I gave him credit for. So I want to do this real quick. So out of all the fights, besides the main event, this is one of the ones that I actually enjoyed. I like to pick up some technical things. I want to tell you what I saw. Tell me if you agree what you saw or what. Oleksiejczuk was pressing the action, but I don't think he was being effective with it. And he only needed was just a small adjustment. Well, I thought Bukauskas was fantastic. He was on his bike, which always never looks good to be on your bike. But what I thought he was doing, he had brief moments at range. But when he did have the range, he'd throw a kick at that brief moment. But because of the pressure from Oleksiejczuk, he kind of had to keep trying to create the space. But he would circle away when he got to the cage. And anytime he was trapped, he would actually even just like shoot in or just try to do a quick grapple, which Oleksiejczuk is terrible on the ground. He wants to back out. So just by initiating the grapple and not really even going for the takedown, that caused Oleksiejczuk to try to completely break away to get to space where Bukauskas wants to be anyways. So that's why I thought that was really brilliant. But why I thought it was terrible by Oleksiejczuk is he was chasing him. He wasn't cutting off the cage. And I was like, man, one small adjustment and those punches is going to be landing. And then, like I said, when he had him trapped, that's when like Bukauskas would grab him or something. To me, that's why I thought Bukauskas won, besides landing cleaner, harder shots. That's just the thing that jumped out. Anything jump out to you in the fight?
Well, mostly what you said there. Going into this, my problem with Bukauskas like I said on the previous, he wants to fight an outfight. You know, he
Yeah,
wants to
that's right.
kickbox out you from range. But I just think UFC level light heavyweights they're going to be strong enough to just kind of chase him down and crash the pocket, take his best shot, and then they're in the range they want to be. But Miocic, just ran after him instead of really cutting off the cage. And I did think it was brilliant that he just used the clinch and just the threat of the clinch takedown to make Miocic gun shy about just charging in. Miocic is borderline UFC level at best, so my question still remains: like, could he have stopped Alonzo Menafield from just grabbing him and chucking him on the ground like he did Claudio Sharon?
Yeah.
I don't know. But Bukauskas has now earned the chance to prove it.
Yeah. Darren asked, does Ben even read the chat? Ben can't read the chat, so the program we use, I'm the one who streams it, so I'm the only one who can read the chat. So Ben doesn't have access. So guys, if you want me to give Ben a comment, just make sure mention my name, and that usually if I see my name, it really jumps out to me, and I'll say it to him. I apologize. We're kind of new at. We're kind of working through the kinks. Maybe we can try to find a way so Ben can see the chat. So he's not trying to be a dick if he's ignoring you guys.
Oh no.
But if it makes you guys like me more than him, then yeah, he's totally being a dick. Before that, Shane Young and Omar Morales fought a close fight. Omar Morales won a decision. This fight, I felt like we both had a very good read on the last fight. How I expected this fight to go to, we both picked Morales to win. So, but I didn't expect it to be the way it was. And what I mean by that is I thought both guys, especially early, was very, very tentative, and that's not either one of their styles. That's why I was really surprised. And I really wonder, is it because they both were coming off a loss, if that's why they were tentative? You get that, you grew up wrestling, I grew up wrestling. One thing people say, a lot of times you have someone who wrestles not to lose. That's what I felt like was happening in this fight. Both guys were kind of, especially early, was fighting not to lose. And the only difference was Morales kind of picked it up a little bit more than Shane Young did, which is really surprising because Shane Young is such a high volume guy.
He is. I was stunned and taken aback, and maybe Young was too, by just how big the difference in strength and size was between the two of them.
That's true.
Obviously, I expected Morales to be the bigger guy, but just how effortlessly it was pretty early on, I think, that Young clinched with him against the fence. He had double overhooks, and Morales just kind of went like this, just completely big brothered him.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, well, that's going to affect how Young approaches the rest of this fight. That basically takes away a weapon he probably thought he had in his arsenal for the rest of the fight. And I think it kind of did, kind
of mess with him. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
And he didn't really have a plan B. It's funny because, and we don't do this, we don't often bash the commentary team. I mean, it's a tough job. It's not easy. But when I used to do the show with John Franklin, we used to have a segment where he'd talk about the commentary team and bash. I want to bash a second because I thought the commentary team, specifically Joe Rogan, was really bad in this fight because it seems like both me and you were seeing that Morales was winning. It seemed like pretty much everyone seemed like Morales won and there's no controversy. Joe Rogan, during the commentary, was really making it sound like Shane Young was winning. Did you catch that at all?
That early on, I had the I didn't really turn the sound on until the main card started. I missed most of the commentary on the first part. It doesn't enrich my experience, and I'm susceptible enough that it can affect my scorecards if they're saying stuff that's really stupid. Sure. So yeah.
Yeah, Arlo mentioned that maybe Shane Young should move down a weight class. Maybe. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know how exactly how his cornerman. I know Dan Hooker was in the corner. I don't know. This is City Kickboxing guy. I know a lot of the guys. With the Brad Riddell last week and Alex Volcano. I don't know if he was affected. And we know we talked about his fight might be changed and whatnot.
Yeah.
I don't know if he have the right. I don't know how affected his corner was. I don't know. But kicking off the card, Marc-Andre Barriault took on Abu Azadar Barrel winning by third round knockout. Azadar coming off almost a 3-year loss. There was a really weird moment in the fight where Azadar's mouthpiece got knocked down and he went down to pick it up and then he got hit, but the referee kind of jumped in and kind of briefly stopped him. And anyways, I just mentioned that I thought we had the last fight wrong. I thought we hit this fight perfect.
Yep. The only thing I got wrong is that Barrio ended up getting the finish. I did love that he continued to step on the gas, even though he probably knew he had the fight in the bag, but he didn't leave it in the hands of the judges, stepped on the gas when he didn't have to, and got the finish.
Well, I'm glad he did, because I don't know what the scorecards were, but like I had it 1 round each, but I thought the 2 rounds were close enough that there was a chance that he could have been down 0-2. Now the third round, I think it was Jay Petrie that tweeted out that he almost went 10-7 the third round, and I actually agree with him. Like I thought it was, if it was 4 seconds left of the fight when he got stopped, if we went to the judges' scorecard, he might have submitted a 10-7. Like I thought it was that dominant that if someone gave it 10-7, like it was definitely no brainer 10-8, maybe even 10-7. I agree.
Oh yeah, I mean a 10-7 round almost by definition probably should have been stopped.
That's right.
And that one was, so yeah.
Shout out to Jake Bowman. I apologize if I'm saying your last name wrong. He says he really hopes Lucay gets Nate Diaz. We didn't mention that Lucay called out Nate Diaz. The reason why, I kind of forgot of it. I forgot about it because it's just not going to happen. Jake, I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to get Nate Diaz. I actually think he does deserve Nate Diaz, and I actually think he'd probably win that matchup. Unfortunately, Vicente Lucay is not a big enough name to attract Nate Diaz. Sorry, I mean, it'd be cool if it actually happened. I don't think it will. But there you guys have it. We have covered all 10 fights. Let's do. This is actually one of the longest shows. We're almost 2 hours already. Let's get to the fun stuff. We have the Bulls and the Bears, the cut list, and then we have the grade. You want to do the cut list first?
Sure, let's do the cut list.
All right. So the cut list, if you guys don't understand how this works, this is where both me and Ben pick guys that we think should no longer be in the UFC. It's not really nice for us to do that, but we try to, cut the fat and make some room for other people. The way they officially get on our cut list, both me and Ben both have to have the same person on the list. Ben, I have 4 people on my cut list.
Wow. I have 2. So let me go first.
You go first.
Again, I can sometimes be talked into it.
Okay.
And let me say, for the record, if Michal Oleksiejczuk had lost, as he should have, I would have put him on my cut list.
Yeah. Which is why Bukakis is not on my cut list, because I thought he should have won.
Yep. Thomas Almeida has lost 4 straight. He has lost 5 of 6. It's crazy to think that 5 years ago, he was the Sean O'Malley.
That's right. He
was just the phenom who was just knocking everybody out.
I think he was favored against Cody Garbrandt, if I recall.
He was favored against Cody Garbrandt. He was 21-0 with, I think, like 16 knockouts.
He had that flying switch knee knockout.
And it just ain't there anymore. And he's been losing to just kind of progressively lower and lower regarded or ranked guys.
So Thomas Almeida was also on my list. Now, in fairness, he lost to studs, but you still have to win. He's lost, like you mentioned, he lost 4 in a row. So Thomas Almeida is officially on the Shillan and Duffy cut list. All right, who is your second mystery person?
It is Tyron Woodley.
Wow.
I'm one of the, like I said on the preview, I feel as though I was one of the last ones to jump off his bandwagon, and even though his performance was a little encouraging tonight, it was mostly encouraging in the sense that, okay, he could beat some people, but the people he could beat in the UFC and the kind of draw he is right now probably don't justify what he's getting paid.
You took this from a very business standpoint, the money wise. I actually totally agree with you. I want him to retire. I don't want him just to get cut. I want him to retire. I don't want him to fight again. But this is a guy, as you mentioned, he's not a fan favorite guy. Usually he has a boring style. He does, tonight was very exciting, but usually I'm with you. So Tyron Woodley, the biggest name on this list today, welcome to the Shillan and Duffy cut list. So I had 2 other names. I had Jared Gordon. You seem much higher than him for me. He's 0-2. I thought he had both bad performances. I would have cut him, but he makes it another day. And the other one I had Common Worthy. I mean, he had back-to-back losses, first-round knockouts, so I was going to cut Common Worthy. Now, guys, I want you to understand what we're trying to say. When we say, like, cut Tyron Woodley but keep Jared Gooden, we're not saying that we think Jared Gooden is better than Tyron Woodley. It's more of a business sense, money-wise. It's a little bit of everything. So, two guys made the cut list. So let's get to the Bulls and the Bears. The Bulls and the Bears, this is a stock market reference if you don't understand it. The Bulls and the Bears are, if it's a bull market or a bull stock, that means things are going up. If it's a bear market or a bear stock, that means things are going bad. So obviously you want your stocks to be a bull market and not a bear market. We can pick up to 3 kind of like hockey stars of the night, 3 being the lowest, 1 being the highest. Bulls or Bears, what do you want to do first?
Oh, let's do the Bears. Let's keep the bad news going.
All right. I will let you go first. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Bear, number 1. Common Worthy. Like, he didn't make my cut list, but for a guy that sort of just popped in out of nowhere as an interesting story, late bloomer, fun personality, and won his first 3 in the UFC, he's now lost 2 in a row. They've both been ugly, and whether he's on your cut list this time or next time, yeah, it's just not a good look. Like, looks like the story's just about over. Next up on my cut list, Abu Azaitar. I mean, you've got the name. Your brother is making a sensation out of himself. You're coming back after almost 3 years. You've got a winnable fight to kind of make your splash, remind us who you were, and he laid an egg. Like, he won the first round, but even that wasn't that dominant, and then he just got shellacked later on. So, bad look for him. My number 1. Sad to say, it's Stipe Miocic.
Wow.
This was and this is someone who said an hour and a half ago, I still think he's the greatest heavyweight in mixed martial arts history, but this was a legacy fight, and this was a no excuses thing. It's not like he got brained in 12 seconds. Ngannou fought off the best Miocic had to offer, and just gave him back more than he could take. I don't know what's coming up next for him. Like, we spent a long time talking about that, but yeah, like, this is a stock down moment for a guy that I still think is the greatest ever.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I'll get to my 3 Bears. My number 3 is a guy that was already made our cut list, and that was Thomas Ameda. Like you said, he was a big underdog in this. He still's lost 4 out of 5. And she said, I'm thinking about, obviously not from this fight to the last fight, but the whole big picture of him. His stock has absolutely crashed. It's like Enron right now. My number 2, Dean Thomas's coaching. And what I mean by this is he had 2 fighters fight tonight, Jillian Robertson and Tyron Woodley. They both went 0-2, so not a good chance for that. Go back. I think Jillian Robertson's on a losing streak. Tyron Woodley's on a massive losing streak, even throwing Greg Hardy, who's coming off a loss. Dean Thomas has not been very successful as a coach. Great person. I'm not talking about a person, but as a coach, not going too well. And my number 1 Bear, going same theme as Dean Thomas, it's got to be Tyron Woodley. The thing you could say about Tyron Woodley is he lost the 3 best guys in the world. That's not the case with Vicente Lucay. Very good fighter, but he was stopped in the first round. He was stopped earliest by the lowest competition he faced in a long time. So Tyron Woodley is my big loser of the night. Let's go to the winners. These are the Bulls whose stock have risen. I will go first this time. My number 3 is Sean O'Malley. I mean, you get really 2 knockouts in the same night. People saying, oh, you missed your moment, and then you have probably an even better knockout. One of the best, ground and pound knockouts I've ever seen. I mean, it was just one punch. That was incredible. My number 2 is African MMA. The continent of Africa, they currently have 3 UFC champions, which is absolutely incredible for a area of MMA that wasn't that long ago, was just basically starting. getting into MMA, especially in the UFC. They now have the heavyweight champion, the welterweight champion, and the middleweight champion. There needs to be, when COVID's over and we can get to Africa, there needs to be an event in one of the African countries. And the number one, I think the UFC was the biggest winner tonight. And going all the way back to what I said, you had a champion. While yes, he was an incredible champion and one of the best ever, he didn't help you too much with marketing. He wasn't that marketable. He's not a good speaker. He kind of has a little marble mouth. He kind of mumbles a little bit. I mumble myself a little bit, so I'm not trying to pick on him. But now you can replace him with the biggest hitter in UFC history, the guy that I say could be your Mike Tyson to me. And now you get to market him against possibly the greatest fighter of all time, Jon Jones. They couldn't have had a better day for the UFC. So that's my winners. Who are your three bulls?
I agree with all three of yours, and I'll throw in the side note on African MMA that, already we've had a generational shift. Africa was a complete MMA backwater. All of a sudden we have 3 UFC champs that were at least born in Africa. I think the next shift is probably coming soon because Kamaru Usman, Israel Adesanya, and Francis Ngannou all had to leave the countries of their birth and go to places with just better flat-out infrastructure for human beings to live.
Sure,
and then obviously better athletic infrastructure before they could have greatness. But the fact that, Ngannou is building facilities in Cameroon for, kids to train combat sports, I could see in 5 or 10 years, the UFC putting, a PI somewhere in West Africa.
Yeah.
And, watch out then. My three. I'm going to go with Miranda Maverick. Yes, she was expected to win, but she won in a way that answered questions. Despite the fact that she admittedly had a poor weight cut, she won the third round of that fight and was not afraid to go to the ground. Winning the third round and not being afraid to go to the ground are the way that you show that you're not that tired. So she survives and advances. I remain, like you, extremely high on her as a prospect. Number 2, Vicente Lucay. Yes, he was expected to beat Tyron Woodley. He was not expected to run through him like wet tissue paper. I mean, I don't know if it was the toughest fight of his career. We're talking about a guy that is in wars every single time out. That's why I love him. But this was certainly the biggest name, the biggest notch of his career. And maybe it'll finally graduate him to those, type of top 10 opponents that he probably deserves to fight. Number 1, Francis Ngannou. For the same reason that I put Miocic on my Bears list, even though, again, I still, am convinced of his greatness. Ngannou didn't just punch through him in 20 seconds with, this didn't look like an unreproducible win. If they ran this back in a week, all those factors would still be in play. All of Ngannou's broadened skills, his poise, his takedown defense. So, yeah, that's a scary thing for, Jon Jones or anybody who's in the heavyweight top 10 watching this fight.
Yeah, now I want to address something because guys are talking in the chat basically saying now, they don't live in Africa. Guys, we understand that. We know that Israel Adesanya lives in New Zealand and Usman lives in Florida and wherever they want to say they're from. I understand that Usman grew up in America. The guys, we're not getting into that. We're just talking in general that there's 3 people born in Africa who are now champions if they want to. Well, I understand Adesanya definitely represents both.
We're not gatekeeping. All 3 of them clearly identify with their African heritage.
Okay, fair. That's exactly what I was trying to say. I mean, Usman wants to be from Florida. Sure, he can be from Florida too. Whatever. Anyways, let's get to the grade. What was your grade for the show?
I'm going to give this one an A. On paper, this thing was miserable. Just relatively low stakes. Outside of the main event, you could argue it didn't have a single top 10 fighter on it. And it delivered. Just some explosive finishes. We learned a lot. Yeah. I maybe I'm stuck in the moment, but yeah, give me an A. This was great.
Yeah, I actually doubling down. We talked about beforehand. If you gave me, what is this card on paper? I would have been like a C minus. With with the title fight carrying so much weight, but every fight for the most part delivered. We had wars, we had unbelievable knockouts, we had a couple of submissions, which we kind of get we got a new champion. Everything was absolutely great. So I also give it an A. So great night.
Real quick, final bonus, last question. Final bonus question from Jay, the man with the stats. If the UFC went back to giving their pay-per-views like titles, like it used to be UFC 74, Bitter Rivals, or Stacked. Or, like what would you call UFC 260? Like UFC 260.
It'd have to be like some kind of heavy thing, like something big, like a explosion or something. I don't know.
UFC 260. Oh shit! The Ford Escort learned takedown defense. There you go.
Yeah.
Brought to you by Toyo Tires.
Brought to you by Toyo Tires. There you guys have it. I want to thank you guys for listening. I want to thank everybody who listened live. If you're listening to this on podcast the next day, we also thank you guys. And shout out to all the people who had the chat rocking. I think this was rocking as good as it ever has been. There has been a lot of people. I'm not going to shut them all out by name because I don't want to forget anybody. But you guys were fantastic. We're trying to do this as much as possible. Me and Ben will be back this week. We're actually going to do a Bellator preview. And so make sure you guys check me out. Hey, that we have a week off from UFC, so we're going to try to cover this Bellator card. We'll try to do that as much as we can. We're not going to be doing Bellator every single week, especially if there's UFC cards or something, but we'll try to do as much as we can. Anyways, he's Ben. I'm Keith, and we'll see you guys next time.